Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com. Tonight we're going to talk about the history of conspiracy. A lot of people, of course, are talking conspiracy, and you're getting the usual, if you don't accept everything that the mainstream media tells you at face value, then of course you must be a conspiracy theorist. Welcome to the Reprehensibles, to the VFM, to the Dread Ilk, and to the Bears. I'm not sure how long we're going to go tonight. I have to admit it, I am pretty tired. We had a pretty intense soccer game today. But sometimes you get a second wind, so we'll see how it goes. First of all, thanks very much to those of you who are subscribing to unauthorized.tv. It's going extremely well. I've been talking to 3 content creators that we are considering bringing on to the channel. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty amazing, actually. We are currently up to, let me see here, 1,673 active subscribers, and that's in 4 days. Pretty remarkable, if you ask me. And so, it's really encouraging to see how so many people are hungry for truth, for how many people are hungry for honesty. Sir Hamster asks, can you talk about the subject matters they might deal with? 2 of them are European, for lack of a better term, survivalists. They're going to go in the survive section, and they're very, very intelligent. One of them has a YouTube channel base that is bigger than anybody else involved except for Owen. And they are, one of them, they both speak English. A number of their videos will be in French with transcripts or with subtitles. And we're going to be publishing a book that the 2 of them have written that is a bestseller in France. And so that's how I know them. And that's not really how I know one of them, but anyhow, they're very smart. The stuff that they have to talk about is very, very interesting. And I think that a lot of people are going to find it potentially useful. And so it's going to be really interesting too to see how when we branch out, how people are going to realize that this is actually a full-fledged network in the making. And so we're looking forward to introducing some of these people to new audiences, and it's going to be really interesting to see how people respond to it. But I'm confident that it's going to go well. I'm confident that people are going to receive it very well. So, anyhow, also I should mention tomorrow we're going to release a new Voxiversity, and so that will be up, and it's going to be interesting. Unfortunately, I screwed up the camera, and so I'm barely in it. I was completely out of focus, and so the producer had to make do and just throw all kinds of movie clips and etc. on top of it. But the key is the message. I mean, yes, we try to build up and improve our video game, but there's going to be steps forward and steps back and so forth. Yes, I watched Owen's apology video. It was funny, but I have to admit, I thought it was much, much funnier when George was barking and Owen yelled, "George, that's not Logos. We discussed it. We discussed this." So Paul Ayers says, "I have a feeling I'm going to love the new additions to unauthorized TV, but my wife will hate it, sadly." Actually, we're going to have stuff for the wives too. One of the people I was talking to is a woman who is publishing a cookbook, and we're also hoping to get the Barcelona Life couple going soon, and those are going to be topics and channels I think, or programs that I believe that women are going to be much more inclined to be interested in. You have to go where people are. You don't have to roll around in the muck. You don't have to wallow in discivilizational nonsense. But there's no reason to offer people things that are interesting. One of the big mistakes I believe that the right has made over time is that they absolutely refuse to offer anything that is of interest to the women. How are you ever going to win the women over if you don't do anything that is of interest to them? And so, I don't deal in those subjects because they're not of interest to me. But I understand very well that there's that my tastes are not in common with most people. Unofficial Bear says, "Vox, did the CIA start the spread of the negative view of conspiracies?" That's the general understanding. That's the general feeling. Freddie C., I agree with you. He says that he wanted to say whoever's choosing the thumbnails for Owen's stream is doing a great job on unauthorized. Yeah, he's also doing them for my streams, and he is doing a really good job. It was kind of funny because when he first started doing it, I was going, I'm not sure those are as good as mine. I kind of like mine better. And now that I've gotten used to his style, I like his style better than my own. So, hey, I'm not a graphic artist. Cordell Mitchell says, "Hey Vox, would you consider making a book or channel relating to ASL tips and strategy?" Absolutely not. There's like 5,000 people in the world who play that game. I'm just now reliably successful at the game, and it would be awesome to hear what you have to say, or someone is equally competent. That's exactly what we can't be doing. I like ASL, but I'm not expert enough to, be posing as one. I know who the experts are. I read them too. I have all the journals dating back to the first one, and I have all the ASL annuals too. I know I've even met some of the guys who have written those articles and who are the genuine experts. So there's two reasons I wouldn't do it. One, because it's such a limited market, and number two, I'm not sufficiently expert to do that. So now we might eventually, if we're successful enough that we can just start doing stuff because we feel like it, we will probably do some kind of wargaming program. I've already talked to a guy who is pretty big in the role-playing game community about the possibility of doing a program at some point in time. But something just based on ASL, that would be crazy. ASL stream just one, please. Yeah, I'll probably do a stream at some point in time. Why not? Have you guys gotten a refund yet from Owen? I haven't. Actually, that's something I would like. I would like to know. Those of you who were members of Owen's YouTube channel, or if you paid him a super chat and you haven't been refunded, then I would recommend actually wait a week and then send an email, because I've been hearing from a lot of people that they're not actually delivering on the refunds. What Western country do you think will undergo diversity wars first? France is looking like it's going to blow up. I've never seen a country so polarized. I would expect France. Italy is also... Italy is probably the first one that's going to have the government actually sending people back. But I don't know if they're going to get into the sort of popular violence. That's much more of a French thing. Yeah, a number of people have been refunded, a number haven't. Can we have a history you never knew? The sort of history you never knew thing is not going to be a stream, but I am going to, if you become a member at unauthorized.tv, the premium content that I'm going to provide, some of the premium content I'm going to provide, is actually going to be selected readings from history. Yeah, it's the kind of thing that is not, I think, of general interest, but it's the kind of thing that I think that serious supporters are going to be very interested in. Let's see here. Slamurai Jamdon says, would you do content on designing games, video games? I used to teach at a technical college. I taught 2 semesters of a course on designing games, the history of games, and so forth. And that was very popular. I actually did 2 paid video courses on it, webinars. And that's something that I am considering doing as premium content for Unauthorized. It's not something that I would want to do that's just generally open to the public, because that would be a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, let's see. Are the different tiers of unauthorized subs going to get different content? Probably not. It doesn't right now. It's all the same. Whether you're basic, whether you're premium, that's mostly to allow people to support to the level that they want to. It's a possibility that we might do something like that eventually, but not right now. And right now, I mean, 95% of the content up there is free anyhow. How is Foucault's Pendulum? It's excellent, but it's a bit of an acquired taste. A site for learning game development. It's not very active, but there is some good stuff on there at devgame.blogspot.com. I've got a number of posts up there. I did one of the webinars and says it was pretty great. So there's a testimonial. Have you ever made an RTS game? I've never made one, but I designed 2. No, I designed 1. But we got signed. We actually pitched it to a couple companies, and then we got signed to something else. So we never did it. How are the game design teams doing? Bit behind schedule, but pretty well otherwise. Divine Right will get done. Game Brain will get done. We're just busy with a lot of other things. So now let's talk about, somebody asked about what the picture was on the cover. And that's what we're going to talk about now. The picture on the cover is of Catiline. He was a Roman senator, and he was the central figure of the moderately famous Catiline conspiracy. It's been the source of a number of time travel novels, historical fiction novels, and so forth. And it's interesting because what a lot of people don't know, in fact, I wasn't aware of this, is that the Catiline conspiracy is actually the second Catilinarian conspiracy. I'll read the description of it. It was a plot devised by the Roman senator Lucius Sergius Catilina with the help of a group of fellow aristocrats and disaffected veterans of Lucius Cornelius Sulla to overthrow the consulship of Cicero and Gaius Antonius Hybrida. In 63 BC, Cicero exposed the plot, forcing Catiline to flee from Rome. The conspiracy was chronicled by Sallust in his work, The Conspiracy of Catiline. This work remains an authority on the matter. Catiline had run in 64 BC. He lost. It was his the consulship, and he became a populist. And he put together a policy of debt relief, and he rallied the poor to his banner along with support from Sulla's veterans. Sulla, if you recall, was the on one side of the First Roman Civil War. And so, the First Roman Civil War was between him and Gaius Marius, and Sulla eventually won it. He revived the office of dictator, which had not been in use for over 100 years, and he also engaged in some pretty serious purges and persecutions that were all politically based. So, and what Sulla was a reactionary. Sulla was opposed to the new men, which of course were the moneyed interests who had come in with Gaius Marius. And so Catiline would be someone that in modern terms would have been denounced in very much the same terms that Trump is. If you think about it, he was against the bankers because his policy was one of debt relief, and his support was among the poor and the veterans. So anyhow, it was unsuccessful because the whole conspiracy fell apart before they were able to bring in their army from outside Rome. Cicero had the conspirators strangled and then announced it after the conspirators had all been strangled. So anyhow, it was interesting because this was not only a conspiracy of the sort that we're told never happens, but what's interesting is there's even an element of a false flag involved. In fact, it's possible that one of the reasons that Catiline engaged in this conspiracy is because he'd already been accused of one not long before. Remember, the actual Catiline conspiracy is called the Second Catilinarian conspiracy. What was the first one? Well, the first one is one that he was accused of committing, but there's no actual evidence that. So Catiline was falsely accused of it. It says, in all likelihood, Catiline was not involved in the so-called First Catilinarian conspiracy, although several historical sources implicate him in it. There does not seem to be a single account that is represented in all the sources. Rather, it seems the accounts represent a collection of rumors accusing different political figures in attempts to tarnish their names. And so they're not even, it says, the first Catilinarian conspiracy was a plot to murder the consuls of 65 BC and seize power. Historians consider it unlikely that Catiline would have been involved, or indeed that the conspiracy existed at all. So what they're literally describing is what today we would call fake news. This so-called conspiracy didn't actually exist, but people in power, Cicero specifically, refers to this. Suetonius actually blamed Caesar and Crassus for it. And so when you look at the complications that exist in modern modern history, or in ancient history, you see the same thing happening over and over and over and over again. I turned off the sound. I turned off the USB disconnect sound, but apparently whatever the problem is still there. So you were just going to have the video, or the sound cuts out for a little bit. But Grime Knight is correct. There's nothing new under the sun. And so when you are, when you're looking at the way that, these things have been happening this way, I mean, how can you possibly take anyone seriously who claims conspiracies don't exist, or people don't plot to do things and whatnot, when people have been doing it for literally more than 2,000 years? You can't. You simply can't. And so if you look at the way that the ancient military historians like Sun Tzu actively advocated deception and actively advocated lying to the public, Machiavelli specifically tells the rulers to lie to the people. The old Roman saying about religion being something that is good for the people, but something that the elite don't actually believe in, which is of course an exaggeration, but even that is indicative of the fact that those in power usually have a fundamentally different perspective, a fundamentally different mindset, and they don't hesitate to misrepresent facts and to describe things that don't happen to the people. It's very common. So Daywalker Bear says British pirates love literal false flags. Well, you see false flags described in the Aubrey Maturin novels, which are very, very well researched, very, very soundly based in history. And it's quite common where they would try to get close to another ship by literally flying a false flag. So false flags are real. And the only way that you can understand history is to accept the reality of conspiracies. There are all kinds of conspiracies. Many different factions, many different groups of people, many different organizations, all working together, working together, working separately, working in competition in order to try to transform the world into something they want it to be, in order to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. That's all it means, is that a conspiracy is just a group of people working together who are not open about their aims, who are not open about their objectives and goals. And what's so crazy about the idea of dismissing things as conspiracy theory, as claiming, as using that a way of saying that something's nonsense, what's so ridiculous about that is that Many of the things that are dismissed as conspiracy theories aren't even possibly conspiracies because they openly own to it. They openly admit it. You can go to the website of the Committee on Global Governance and they will tell you, we believe in global governance, we believe in ruling the world, and we believe this is how the world should be ruled. Is that a conspiracy? No, it's not a conspiracy because there's nothing hidden about it. There's nothing secret about it. They're coming right out and telling you what they're going to do, what they want to do. But not everyone does that. And everyone who doesn't do that is a conspiracy actor. They are actively involved in a conspiracy of some type. We would not have laws against racketeering if people did not engage in conspiracies. There's a number of crimes that literally use the word conspiracy in the law, describing the criminal act. How can you possibly say they don't exist? If you know anything about history, you can see that a significant portion of world leaders since the beginning of recorded human history have perished or been removed from office or blinded or emasculated or otherwise rendered unfit to rule through a conspiracy. And so, are we to pretend that these things no longer exist? Of course not. Of course not. Vox, does researching conspiracies lead you to believe that Revelations is definitely going to take place? I believe it to be literally foretelling the end times. It does look that way sometimes, I have to admit. You know, a lot of the stuff that seemed impossible, a lot of the stuff that seemed ridiculous when people were writing about the end times in the 80s suddenly don't look so crazy anymore. You know, the idea that no man shall buy or sell unless he has the mark suddenly doesn't sound so crazy when you see what happened to Owen Benjamin with YouTube. When you see what has happened to Alex Jones, you know, when you've seen all the people who've been deplatformed and demonetized, you know, I don't believe that YouTube is the beast. You can see how the concept works through their actions. Irish Energy says Bismarck faked a letter to get the French to start a war. Marx fell for it. Yeah, well, there was the fake letter to Mexico from Germany, you know, trying to get Germany involved, or Germany supposedly trying to get Mexico involved in the war. It's ridiculous. There's nothing realistic about that. Jimmy Jones points out many, if not most, of the Byzantine emperors over the centuries reached the throne through conspiracy. Happens all the time. Yeah, that's correct. No question. Let's see. Okay, I need to hit a few super chats here because I missed some at the end yesterday. So, let's see here. A suggestion for the unauthorized, let's be more generous with the character count, such as 250 characters for $5, 500 for 10 plus, enables us to provide better arguments. I like the idea in general. I don't think that we need to provide people with the ability to throw up walls of text. We're not trying to argue. This is not a venue for debate. And so, you know, I'd like to give people more room for questions, but I don't want to, you know, what I don't want to do is leave enough room for people to start, you know, asking 3 or 4 questions at a time, because that's just going to bog things down. Brazilian Bear says, I live in California and feel like this is the place for right-wing views with the exception of one friend. Even my family is starting to shun me for my views. Well, You know, if people are shunning you because you are honest and you speak the truth, you should not want to be around them. Ponderosa Bear asks, what do you think of Brandon Sanderson? Honestly, I find his work rather boring. I've read The Way of Kings. I tried reading one of the Iron whatever books. Just, wasn't interested in it. I've never found it. I just haven't found his stuff very interesting. Flynn agrees that IQ has a hereditary maximum, but thinks that achieving the maximum can be hindered due to cultural practices like habitually beating your children, lowering the mean IQ. What do you think? Yeah, I tend to agree with that, but I think it's less beating your children and more poor nutrition, inhibiting brain development. So, okay, we're caught up. That is good. So, there's a couple more here. Dave Murphy's Jesus Exposed Part 1 and Part 2 really messed with me today. Can you please examine and explain it away? No, I'm not going to waste my time on that kind of stuff. I'm not here to solve everybody else's problems. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's somebody who, just look around. You'll find somebody who's dealt with it. I mean, you got to keep in mind, these kind of atheist apologetics are inevitably flawed all over the place. And so just do a search for somebody who's written, I'm sure that someone's written a critique of it somewhere. And so, just find it. You don't need my intellectual credibility. You just need to read both the original source and the criticisms with an open mind. Because I can guarantee you, without even having ever heard of Dave Murphy or ever having seen either of those, whatever Jesus Exposed is, or read it or whatever, I can guarantee that it's not going to be soundly based. Muffhead says, are you aware of the prominent rabbis predicting the return of the Messiah this Purim, 2 days away? No, I'm not, but I give them absolutely no credence whatsoever. They have been wrong. They've been wrong even more often than Christians have been wrong about identifying the Antichrist. I was working on a book called Stalking the Beast. I was actually signed to write a thriller called Stalking the Beast. And they ended up teaming me up with a thriller writer to co-write the thing, and it just didn't. But I did write the intro to it, and it's kind of funny because the editor at the publisher at Simon & Schuster, or Pocket Books, I guess it was, the editor at Pocket Books who read it said, I don't know, I mean, the introduction was really great, and then just the rest of it it read like it was written by a different person. I was like, well, it was. I didn't write any of that. I just gave an outline. And so one of the things that I was basing it, Christians who were convinced in the year 999 that the Antichrist had arrived, and they all knew who it was too. He was a Roman politician, if I recall correctly. And I mean, they were all convinced he was the Antichrist. And then I remember when people were quite seriously trying to claim that Bill Clinton was the Antichrist. I mean, I thought that was absolutely ridiculous, And so, when you're a kid growing up in a Christian family, in a Christian community, and there's a number of people who, read the Hal Lindsey books and that sort of thing. I mean, these people, they thought the world was going to end in 1988 and then again in 1989. I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind is the Bible verse where he says, no man knows the hour. And so, when the time comes, when the season comes, we'll know. But we're not there yet. Yes, things are crazy, but the tide is turning. I think that history is a pendulum that keeps swinging towards the end time, but it's a pendulum. And so the pendulum is swinging. Charlemagne says, I find people who don't deny that conspiracies exist, but they never admit to any serious possibility that a contemporary event could be a false flag, especially shootings. How do you deal with this? Quite easily. I ignore them, and if they talk to me, I tell them that they don't know what they're talking about. I'll admit that it's a lot easier when you're 50 years old and intellectually arrogant to just ignore what people say because it's nonsense. The older you get, the less you talk about things like this with your peer group. People are much more interested in talking about their kids, their jobs, and so forth. So it's pretty easy to not get into this kind of thing. But when you do, most people are so hopelessly ignorant that there's just no reason to take it seriously. You have no way of knowing whether something's a false flag or not. You have no way of knowing whether something actually happened or whether it was an event staged for the cameras. You can't possibly know. And so I wouldn't ever place too much faith or confidence in the idea of, it's on the news, it must have happened that way. Spice Bear says, we got to stop wasting time on people who don't get it. I don't. Jesus himself said, if you go and you tell people the good news, and if they accept it, you instruct them. And if they don't accept it, you leave and you shake the dust off your sandals and you forget about them. So if those are the instructions from Jesus Christ regarding the gospel, the idea that we need to waste any time educating those who find it hard to believe. And here's the thing, the way that people work is funny. The less you try to convince them, the more you just treat them like somebody whose opinion isn't even worth trying to change, the more likely they are to actually come around sooner. Elijah M. Thompson said, listen to the portion of Jordanetics, and it was a great vocalization. Good, I'm glad. Static says, Scott Adams spends half his time explaining how false flags and government conspiracies are all wrong. Scott Adams doesn't know what he's talking about. Scott Adams has no idea. Scott Adams' primary goal is to convince you that he is a wizard. That's all he wants to do. And if everybody starts believing seriously in false flags and government conspiracies, Scott will start telling you that he believed in them all along and he predicted them all along. The guy has no consistency whatsoever. He's a brilliant commentator on the human condition. Dilbert is an amazing analysis of the way people behave. But when it comes to historical analysis, Scott Adams is not one of the first people that I would rely upon. Clark Smith says, "Hello, Vox. I've been following you for about 3 weeks now. Practically old school. Thanks for sharing your intellect with us. You're welcome. Questions. Are you an capital E evangelical? No. I am a non-denominational Christian. What is your general opinion of the God Emperor Donald Trump? No, he said President Trump. I'm sorry. I just, when I see President Trump, it just automatically translates in my head to God Emperor. Trump is the best that we could have possibly gotten at this point in time. He has been one of the greatest American presidents already. But, and you knew there was a but coming, it appears, and I say appears because we don't know for sure, it appears that he has been successfully tied down and prevented from doing what is necessary in order to save the country. You know, I know that I think that he is, I mean, the problem is Donald Trump is the president that we needed when Ronald Reagan was elected. But we had Reagan instead. And Trump is still, he's still too weak on foreign policy. You know, he ran on a campaign of America first, and he's done a good job. He's done a good job. He's kept us out of a number of wars that the neocons and others have been pushing for. You know, so I support him completely, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm not a little bit disappointed with the way that he is governed. Maybe it's necessary. Maybe he has a 4D chess plan in place. You know, I love the article that Donald Trump Jr. wrote on how mainstream conservatives and Republicans need to take the whole social media censorship thing seriously. That's been one of the big complaints by a lot of people about Trump, is the way that he hasn't defended those who have defended him. But, you know, I think that he is in an even more difficult position than most people understand, and I think he's doing the best that he can. Will it be enough? It doesn't look like it. Probably not. I don't see how it could be, but the man is doing his best. How much of our history has been rewritten? A lot of it. A lot of it. It's amazing how full of lies the current mainstream history is. What does it mean that authorities in multiple countries are so desperate to stop distribution of the Christchurch video? Nothing necessarily. I mean, it could be just that it's you know, excessively violent and whatnot. But it also could mean that there are some giveaways in it that it's a fake. I don't know. I haven't watched it. I don't have any opinion on it. Spiderbip says Jordanetics is devastating. It is indeed. Scott Adams is peak boomer. Yeah, that may be part of the problem. My parents were missionaries for 25 years. What do you think about missionaries? I think missionaries are wonderful, and I think they're very important people. But I think that they often fail to understand that they're more needed back in the United States now than they are in, you know, going down to Belize or whatever. Nuclear Pizza says, I had it and then it jumped on me. Okay. Nuclear Pizza says, not disagreeing too hard, but it seems strange we'd have all the ingredients for apocalypse but not have one. Since when do humans not screw up? We don't have all the ingredients for apocalypse. We have a lot of them. We have a lot more than we did. But remember, back in the 80s, everybody thought the same thing. So, let's Let's see. Hi, Vox. What do you think about some Lovecraft Circle members like Robert E. Howard or Clark Ashton Smith? Big fan of Howard's work. Really impressed by his historical knowledge. Ashton Smith, not so much a fan. Kevin Burger King says, Scott Adams thinks he's smart because he watched Fox News and CNN. Yeah, I don't know why anyone watches either. The Dashing Rogue says, just got here, what we talking about? Well, we've been talking about history and conspiracy, and now we're just kind of answering super chats and rambling. Let's see. What do you think about eunuchs and trans kids? Do you think there's a connection there? No. Were eunuchs very loyal in the past to their ball choppers? Eunuchs were famously disloyal. So no. If so, they were trying to make that with kids. No, that would not be the reason. Let's see here. Drum Machine Bear says, I'm from the Owen and Vox conversion, but I wish I'd been around longer. That's kind of funny. Vox, have you read Confession by St. Augustine? Yes. Thoughts? Augustine is a important Christian thinker. I don't always agree with him. And I think that he was a little bit of a dramatist. You know, the whole, I was the worst sinner once I stole some apples. I mean, you know, what is that? Let's see. Vox, what are your main hang-ups with the Catholic Church? The official church dogma. Shout out to the Bears. You know, I love I'm not one of those who hates the papist trappings. I think that the Catholics should build all churches, you know, and decorate all churches. But, you know, my main hang up with the Catholic Church had always been the official church dogma on a number of topics. You know, I'm not keen on the way that the Jesuit order operates, the whole Machiavellianism. And obviously, Vatican II, I think, completely converged the organization. That's why you're seeing all of the child abuse scandals that are being revealed and so forth. I mean, it's been completely infested with evil. Now, a lot of other Protestant churches have also been, you know, riddled and invaded and converged and so forth. But in the case of the Catholic Church, because it's centralized, the invasion and convergence is more structural. You know, you can take, I mean, Russell Moore is a complete train wreck, but no Southern Baptist church cares at all what Russell Moore thinks, says, or does, and he has absolutely no power over them. It's very different in the Catholic Church because it's very centralized. I don't pay any attention to South Park, so I don't even know what you're talking about. Vox, do you think theocratic racial fascism is the answer? No, I think Christian nationalism is the answer. Trump exposed the neocons for the fake right that they are. He did. That's true. I mean, the biggest thing that Trump did is he kept us out of war with Russia. He has been an amazing president. The problem is that the situation that the United States is in is so serious. It's a declining empire. It's heading towards being a collapsing empire. And so his degree of difficulty is much greater than a president, you know, earlier in the life cycle of the country. Does Trump control the Fed? Does Trump control the Fed? No, he does not. Larson Dillon says, do you find it odd that both the Christchurch and Las Vegas shooters had unlikely and untraceable sources of income? Yes. I mean, I've already said that I believe that if I had to bet on it, I expect that it will turn out that the New Zealand shootings were a false flag. Ombre's got no name. Vox, if we can't know for sure whether an event is a false flag result of conspiracy, shouldn't we might as well take the event at face value? No, because the face value is the one thing we know that the mainstream media wants you to believe. And the mainstream media is not good people. So I conclude the opposite. You should never, ever believe the official story. Let's see. Do the Ridgebacks have logos? Well, let me think. Our first Ridgeback did. Our second Ridgeback did. Our third Ridgeback does. And our fourth Ridgeback does not. She's kind of a little pest. She's like the quintessential little sister in dog form. Daniel says, which version of the Bible do you prefer? In English, the NIV. Also, do you consider the fact that some passages in the Bible may have been misinterpreted between languages and or revised? I don't just consider that, I assume that. I speak at least a smattering of 5 different languages. You can't even say something that makes sense when you go from one language to another if you translate it literally. But the Bible is written by men inspired by the Spirit of God. We see through a glass darkly. It's all we have except for the Holy Spirit. And so, you have to rely upon it, and then secondly, rely upon your spiritual discernment, and then, only then, rely upon an elder in the faith whom you respect. Hey Vox, do you think with the normal population having access to the internet that it may be possible for a large number of people to correctly identify a false flag for what it is and retaliate? Well, I don't know about retaliate, but it is obviously possible for a large number of people to correctly identify a false flag. The thing is, you're not usually going to, even if you can correctly identify it being a false flag, you probably can't identify who actually did it. Just knowing that something is false is very different than knowing what the truth is. Wasn't the Catholic Church corrupt since the beginning with Constantine? I mean, all human organizations are corrupt, but there's levels of corruption. Vox, your take on the Gallic War by Julius Caesar? It's one of the classics of military history. I mean, what's there to talk about or say about it? It's any interest in talking about the Battle of Alesia on unauthorized TV. Maybe after I play the game. I've always wanted to play that, so maybe one of these days I'll actually do that. But first, I want to play Siege of Jerusalem. Let's see here. And Logic says Ron Paul was our best chance for positive change, and the MSM and the GOP blew it. I never really believed that he had any sort of chance. His son has been a real disappointment. I mean, Ron Paul's a good man. I absolutely would have supported him for president, but Kevin Burger King says, what is your evidence for New Zealand being a false flag? The fact that the guy was in Pakistan and North Korea and Israel and didn't have a job, but had money to buy lots of guns. There is absolutely nothing I read the manifesto, and there's no way that one person wrote that manifesto. That's a copy and paste job that was done by several different people. I saw absolutely nothing indicating that it was a genuine event that was just committed by one person for personal motivations. Is that conclusive proof? No, of course not. But I don't. I think it is so obviously false that I'm not even paying attention to. I don't know why people are still asking about it or talking about it. I find it completely uninteresting. Vox, have you read Anthony Sutton's 4 Histories on Wilson and FDR? No, I have not, but I am aware of that. I mean, like somebody said, that false flag was so bad that the American agencies that do false flags were embarrassed for him. And then also the way that he's supposed to be a neo-Nazi who didn't rant about the Jews. Have you ever encountered a single neo-Nazi who doesn't spend at least 80% of their time ranting about the Jews? I mean, come on. Are you for or against anarchism, voluntarism? Against. Muffhead says, have you formulated an asymmetric strategy that Christian nationalists can use to retake the Western world? I haven't, but Matteo Salvini has. Pay attention to Italy. Voting won't work with demographic shift. Probably not, no. But, I mean, voting seldom works to significantly change things. The changes that we're seeing, we didn't vote for. I'm familiar with Mike Heiser. Yeah, Larson Dillon. He earned millions investing in a known Bitcoin scammer who only stole from investors. Sure he did. Vox, will these dark streams get backed up on unauthorized TV? You obviously haven't been there. This will be up on unauthorized TV within probably 2 hours. Yesterday's dark stream's already up there. Owen's stream yesterday is also already up there. Any chance the old brainstorms will be on unauthorized? I'll have to talk to the brainstormers and see. Do you have any merch available currently? Yes, go to crypto.fashion. Will Milo do anything on unauthorized? Quite possibly. Not right away. But we've come to the hour, and so I'm going to let you all go. I encourage you to subscribe to unauthorized.tv. We're got a lot of changes and a lot of new content that's going to be coming soon. And there's already hours of free content every day. So swing by when you get a chance. Remember, the history of conspiracy is the history of humanity. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.